Welcome to the School of Wedding Photography. I'm here with Jacki Bruniquel, a photographer from South Africa. How are you?
Hi, nice to be here. Well, how's it, as we say in South Africa? Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. Jacki was Photographer of the Year in Admired in Africa in 2016. She has won numerous finalist awards and was a finalist in the Nikon Africa Photographic Awards. She was also included in a book, Women on Women, A History of Women Photographers in South Africa. Can you tell us a bit about that book?
Gosh, well, it was a book that came out quite some time ago. And it was really just a book about different female photographers that are working and living in South Africa. Everything from photojournalists through to fine artists. At that stage, like I said, I was studying, so I was very lucky to be included. I've studied twice, actually. I did a degree in fine art when I got straight out of school, and then I traveled for some time, and then I came back and I did a diploma in photography for a couple of years.
Okay.
And that's how that book came about.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
But I found it in the library the other day, so I was quite chuffed to see it again.
So you've got a background as a painter, is that right?
Well, I went to Michaelis, which is the fine art school of the University of Cape Town, to become a painter. And I landed up not loving painting so much when I was there, but at the same time I became quite entranced with the darkroom and just landed up majoring in photography, which wasn't my plan at all. Fine art is quite different to what I think a lot of fine art wedding photographers call themselves these days.
Yeah.
It's more the kind of, stuff that's, if you're good enough and lucky enough to land up in the Guggenheim or the Met, or in South Africa, the Zeiss. So it wasn't particularly technical. You weren't going there to learn how to expose a negative properly. It was to learn to come up with a concept and play with that concept and create a body of work that would be exhibited, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's had quite a big impact on the way that I approach weddings, definitely.
Now I was going to ask that. What has the impact been?
Well, I think the main thing for me is that I'm not that cookie cutter kind of, I call it sausage factory wedding photographer that goes out and has like a shot list and does the same thing at every wedding in order to do lots of weddings and get them done as quickly as possible and make lots of money. I tend to offer a much more bespoke service where I like to get to know people and know what they're about and who they are and what makes them tick, and therefore create images that are specifically about them, that are more kind of concept driven. So, they'd maybe hang those images on their wall and they just become more, what's the word? I don't know, telling their story as opposed to just being a wedding photographer.
Repeating a story. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you sort of get to know individual couples?
Well, first
time and money wise is what I'm thinking.
Sure. So I take on less weddings than the average photographer.
Okay.
When I was first kind of really got into weddings, I was shooting maybe between 28 and 35 weddings a year. And then I found I just totally burnt out. I was a complete mess because I was trying to put as much energy and effort and enthusiasm as I am now into every wedding. And then obviously, you're kind of running a business during the week and marketing and invoicing and doing albums and editing and whatever. And I find myself working, I don't know, like 70 hours a week sometimes, even more than that, because very often I was shooting all over the country and traveling back on Sunday. So I just had no time off, and then landed up in hospital with full adrenal burnout and then just went, So I only take on between 14 and 18 weddings a year, and then I charge more for that, which works better for me, which also gives me time to do other things, which I think then influences the weddings as well.
What sort of things?
I love doing portraits of people. So I'm working on two personal projects, which I'm
Do you
not
mean
really
do you mean
will be
painting
able to
or
say.
photographic?
No, actual doing portrait projects where I'm not necessarily being commissioned. I'm doing it for free per se.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to do work for free because this is when you get to play and grow and learn new techniques, and there's not that pressure of having to deliver. So basically, I'm working on two different projects, which I'd hope to exhibit and also to make into books at some point, which I'm very excited about. But
What?
when I was back in the days of shooting 35 weddings a year, then I wouldn't have
No
been able
time.
to do
Yeah, yeah.
that.
So how? So you've worked a way that you've increased your pricing. I'm guessing you've just
Sure.
increased your pricing to be able to manage the lesser number of weddings. Is that what's happened?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the way that I do it is obviously working out my bottom line, like how much I need to survive, and then how much my business needs to survive, and then obviously how much more I'd need to save and for the future, and then how much more it would be like a holiday, and
Yeah.
obviously there's business expenses and all of that.
Yeah.
But what I do is I will book enough weddings to cover all of that. And once that's covered, then I put my prices up. And it's not like I've gone from charging X amount to, just times it by
Yeah.
1,000% or whatever, because that would just be ludicrous. It has been something that's been incremental.
Right. Okay. Okay. Over what sort of time frame would you have changed it?
I'd say over the last 5 years specifically, but certainly the last 3 years.
Okay.
I recently turned 41, and that was also a time where I want to have more time for myself and more time for being an artist and really putting back, because I think, as a wedding photographer, you're just shooting and you're on that hamster wheel all the time, which means that often we don't give ourselves the space to really re-inspire ourselves, to be looking at books and looking at movies. And I think it's so important for all photographers. I mean, they say you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's not only physically putting back vitamins and nutrients, it's also in our kind of level of inspiration. So certainly having more time, I think, allows me to be more creative, to learn more stuff, to sit online and learn different courses and come up with new ideas and get to know my clients as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You have what I would call a distinct style, and I'm wondering how you have developed that and how someone else can develop their own style.
I think a big part of developing your own style is actually knowing who you are and knowing what you like. I think a lot of photographers, particularly photographers that just start out, land up blindly copying trends for the sake of it and just doing what everyone else is doing, instead of actually looking at loads and loads of inspirational material. And not only wedding photographs, but look at fashion, look at fine art stuff, look at architectural, look at everything, look at the history of photography. And then start looking at what aspects of images that you're drawn to, what it is that you actually like about them. Maybe it's the composition, maybe it's the use of color, maybe it's the style. I don't know, not the style, but like the styling. And then I think once you start collecting images, you can start drawing on the threads of what you like. And then once you have those threads, you can then apply that to your own way of shooting. So you're not just blindly copying, you're actually basically making your own visual language of things that make sense to you. I always say that a person's style should kind of look like their home. Hopefully you're not messy. Like my house is really bright and colorful and probably a bit bohemian and interesting.
Yeah.
So I would say that translates into my work, whereas I've seen other friends of mine and they're very minimal and clean lines and basic, and it looks like their work. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. How long do you think it takes to develop a style?
Gosh, I would say I've been seriously shooting weddings for 8 years now. I had done weddings before that, but I certainly never considered myself a wedding photographer then. And I really do believe my style is constantly evolving and changing because I'm always trying to learn new things and pick up new things. And but I think inherently you do have a style because everyone has a certain way of seeing and interpreting the world if you're true to yourself. But it takes a while and it's always growing. If I look at work that I did 8 years ago, I'm actually horrified, to be honest. I look at it and go, oh, I can't believe I took that.
What was I thinking? Yeah, that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So it's something that's always growing, but I think if you remain true to your core roots, of course we all change along the way, but yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm starting to wonder about if you're sort of working towards a style, and this kind of goes to what you said earlier about not sort of being a factory.
Sure.
How do you sort of avoid getting stuck in a rut? So sort of almost a creative rut where you've worked out what you sort of feel is your style, and then you keep shooting in that, and then after a while you're thinking, oh, I'm bored.
This is so boring. I want to shoot my leg off.
Yeah.
I think that happens to photographers all the time, and I think the most important thing is to play, and also not to have this huge ego that we know everything, because as soon as you think you know everything, then somehow that's where you've stuck, because there's always something to learn. There's always some new technique or trick that could ultimately help you problem solve. But, as an artist, artists play a lot. They experiment with things. They, research different things. They're always looking at different ideas. And I think that's something that I love bringing into my photography is just being childish with things, and not taking everything so seriously, playing with lighting, not being afraid of making mistakes, really kind of rolling with it. And
will you do this at a wedding, or is this sort of personal time?
I have. I often just go for it. I try and be fearless and go, okay, let's just try. And sometimes you fail. Sometimes you go, oh my gosh, I just did something that I never ever knew was possible. But certainly having the time to play in your own time gives you a lot more confidence when experimenting with different things during a commissioned shoot. Yeah. You can't bring everything, but sometimes it's good to throw caution to the wind and see what happens.
Yeah. How do you think people can avoid following trends?
I think, again, it's that thing of really knowing yourself. When I first started out in wedding photography, like I said, that was sort of 8 years ago, it was a big trend to put that Polaroid kind of yellowy filter over everything, which I put my hand up and I did. And now when I look at those images, I'm like, ugh. But I know that personally, I love very clean, just true color, nice, punchy, impactful photographs. I've taken this time to really explore that, and I think I'm sticking with that. And I love beautiful black and whites, the looks like film kind of thing that's going on trend. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it at all, but it's not me. And maybe I would do it for one project, but I certainly wouldn't do it just because everyone else is doing it. So again, I think it's remaining true to yourself and what you like, because if you're putting those images out, there are going to be clients that are going to like that, and those will be the clients that come to you. And I have that a lot with clients who say, oh, I like all these dirty pictures where, you have kind of a pink flower in the photograph. It looks like it's beige. They're not keen on it. So.
Now, I know you've been involved in a number of workshops, and
Yes.
I'm wondering what questions you normally get asked. What's sort of a typical question?
Like during the workshop, or?
Yeah, generally. I mean, what do you feel sort of younger photographers keep asking?
How to get more clients. That's probably the first thing that everyone says. How do I make more money?
Well, how do you
Yeah, and
answer that?
it's a lot of technical questions. I get asked like, how do you light a reception? I'm like, wow, okay, that's not something I can send you in an email.
Yeah.
I think getting more clients, again, it's something you need to be true to yourself and only put out there what you would like to come back to you, and to be quite genuine and authentic and who you are. And that's not only what's on your website, but also what's on your Instagram and what's in your Facebook. You need to actually think about what kind of person you want to work with, and then be writing to that person every single time that you are marketing, so that you know that that person hears you. You know, when they're reading your marketing material, they hear you and they relate to that and go, I want to work with that person.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah. So for me, for example, I like photographing more creative portraits, which kind of goes into my fine arts background and sensibility, and having fun and, making that image that's specifically about that person. I kind of call it creative narrative portraits. And then the other side is that I really, really love watching people. I love, love, love doing the more documentary, real human moments. But I have a bit of a funny sense of humor. So I love the kids with the fingers up their nose and, grandpa dancing with the daughter and all that, or granddaughter, should I say, all that kind of stuff. So when I am writing to my client, as it were, and I say writing to my client via Instagram, because that's what you're doing, or Facebook, that's what I'm thinking about, because I want people that are going to be hiring me because of those two main stylistic traits, as it were, as opposed to somebody that's wanting loads and loads of family photographs. 20,000 sort of formal images, if you know what I mean. Because there are those weddings where, let's stand there for 1 hour and just take a picture of everyone.
Yeah.
That it would be no point to hire me for that.
Yeah, okay. So since you've started doing that, have you found you've attracted the client that's right for you?
Definitely. I literally have not had a bridezilla in, gosh, like maybe 6 years.
All right, okay.
It's interesting. There's a quote by Annie Leibovitz which says, you can see in my pictures that I wasn't afraid to fall in love with these people. And I've always loved that, because I find that when I'm able to like really genuinely have a respect for my clients and enjoy them and love them, then I tend to get better images out of them.
Yeah.
So it has worked.
Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on the sort of the industry at the moment, where it's at?
I think it's an interesting time, because there's never been more photographers than there are now. Everyone's a photographer. But at the same time, there's never been, well, I don't think, more value placed on photography. People are very interested in having everything documented in their life, from, even the birth through to funeral photography. It's insane. So it's an interesting time to be a photographer, because there is a bigger marketplace for photography. And I think people need to kind of think out of the box and maybe stop moaning so much. Like, I really believe in the power of attraction. If you're constantly moaning about the industry's totally stuffed and there's no work and everything else, the chances are you're just like repelling energetically all that stuff. And I know that sounds very, very woo-woo.
So when you say think outside the box, what do you mean?
Well, for example, okay, so I recently, we lost our dog, and I don't even like dogs. It sounds like a crazy thing. But I met a man who had a dog, and I landed up falling in love with him and the dog. And his name was Panther Bear, and he was the best dog in the whole world. Gosh, he was amazing. And he literally just got some bacterial infection, and he died within a week. And I was distraught. I've been depressed about it for like 2 months, which is very interesting. My dad keeps saying to me, you see, my dad's a dog lover. Anyway, I decided, as a kind of a cathartic way of getting over that was to start photographing people with their pets, to photograph that human connection or that relationship between these beings and humans. And it's just been interesting because I've sent out a few things on social media, and I've had such a huge response from people wanting portrait shoots of them and their dogs. And that's just totally, I mean, if you told me 4 years ago that I would be photographing people and dogs, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by thinking outside of the box, is that, think of something you haven't done before.
Yeah. Do you offer anything? Do you shoot generally things other than weddings, like other parts of people's life, so their family portraits or their babies or pregnancy, anything like that?
I don't market myself as a newborn photographer. I absolutely hate doing newborn shoots because they usually take like hours and you get peed and pooed on, and it's just not my vibe at all. But as a result of photographing couples, I do land up doing other shoots. They'll come to me and they'll be, please do my newborn shoot. I can't imagine anyone else doing it except you. And please do my maternity shoot. And, please can you do a family shoot and whatever. So yes, I do other portrait shoots, definitely.
But you haven't made it sort of a key part of your business. It's not in there as core.
I haven't. Okay, so my new website, I will be marketing portraits more than my current website. My new website's going to be launching in the next month or so.
Okay.
But it's more about portraits per se as opposed to newborn shoots, if that makes sense.
Yes, okay.
So I love doing couple shoots and portraits of people with their dogs now. I call them pack portraits is what the phrase.
Yeah.
It's been quite interesting. And then obviously portraits of people for their portfolios and websites, family portraits, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What the photographers that normally ask you how they get more clients, what do you think are sort of the important questions they should be thinking of, or when they're starting out? Apart from that,
I think it's important to learn as much of the technical side as that you can, so that when you get into a panic on the wedding day, you have a box of tools, as it were, that you can problem solve. I mean, they say the difference between a great photographer and an amateur is that, the amateur can take pictures when everything's going well, and the professional is somebody that can still deliver when everything's going badly. I think it was Fearless Photographers that posted that the other day.
Yeah.
And I think that is quite important, is to know your gear, to know what works for you. And then obviously when it comes to your branding and your website and your marketing, to make sure that you're being authentic, that you know who your ideal client is and that you are marketing to that person specifically. But then also to get to grips with figures, because, creative people are notoriously kind of like, I don't want to look at numbers. And I mean, I put my hand up because I'm like that. A big problem, I mean, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but you have a lot of people really undercharging. And I don't know how people even run a business, let alone actually make any money, because they're going, you're making X amount on one day, but it's not one day. It's a lot of days that goes into one wedding, and then you kind of have to factor in, like, are you paying yourself a pension? Are you going to put your kids through school? All those various different things. And I think if people actually do their figures properly and do their numbers, then they wouldn't feel bad charging what they're actually worth.
How do you think photographers that are more established and have realized that they need to be charging, appropriate amounts to cover pension and all the other expenses that are realistic in life, how do you think they can compete with photographers who may be 20 and are charging,
Sure, and
you
still
know, and
living at home.
they're living at home, and they're not really thinking yet about superannuation or, you know, long-term savings.
Look,
How do
I
we
think
solve
there's
that?
a different market for everyone. You know what I mean? There's going to be somebody that's on a budget and only has X amount to spend on photography. Not everyone has a lot of money to spend on photography, and you might have some people that have a really big budget, but they don't value photography. And you have other people that really value photography and they're willing to pay for experience. And I think that's where most of my clients come in, because they're not wanting somebody to just snap some pictures of the wedding or the way that it looked. You know, they're wanting somebody that's going to create something unique for them. And I think that's why the price tag that I charge, you know, for people, they say that it's worth it because they're not getting the same album that everybody else is getting. They're getting something that's unique to them.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously, then you also, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but you also have
no.
the peace of mind that if it rains, your photographer is going to be able to deliver, you know, or if things go wrong, they're not going to get into a panic and freak out. And then there's more things like you have more than one camera body, and you know, you don't back up on one hard drive, and you have, you know, you basically being responsible and making sure that your images are going to get saved properly and that you deliver.
Yeah. I guess then it's a bit of an education process with the clients to make them be thinking about these things. Is that something you do when you meet people?
I have written quite a lot of articles on my website, which basically, I guess, educate my clients on not only how I work, but also how to make their day run smoothly if they are wanting great pictures. And I find just by writing those, it saves me a lot of time because I can say, here's some links rather than, you know, typing out every single email. But obviously it puts you in a position of having knowledge and having a certain amount of authority on the subject. So people therefore will take you a little bit more seriously than if you're just arriving with your Wix site and your Facebook page. Well, you know.
Yeah, it does happen. Now, you've mentioned you are working on a new website, and I guess I'm wondering, what is it that you're looking to do with this new website? Is it sort of a rebrand, or are you just sort of honing a message? Or
total rebrand.
Okay.
Total rebrand.
Okay.
I felt that my old site is quite old now. And I don't think that it's really matured with me. I feel like it's a Jacki 8 years ago, which is what it is basically. So the new site will just be more modern, clean, and mature. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And then I will actually at some point, because I've been running workshops for photographers, which I call the Unstuck Yourself workshop, which is basically aimed at photographers who have got into that burnt out, stressed out, freaking out, can't keep up with the work, scared of their flash, fearful of everything, too scared to put their prices up. And it's basically a day workshop where we address all of those issues. I start the morning off with talks about how to get over creative blocks, how to develop your own style, how to find your ideal client, how to put your prices up. And then the afternoon is basically about how to problem solve in difficult shooting situations. You know, when you arrive and you've only got one place to shoot and it's a dark courtyard, for example, and it's really ugly. Or what do we do if it's raining? So the idea really behind it is to give photographers a total creative reboot so that when they leave, they're feeling inspired and ready and happy to shoot again, but also taking a bit of a fear out of tricky shooting situations so that people are encouraged to play more as opposed to being in that very rigid, I do this at every single shoot because it's safe.
Yeah, okay.
So I am going to be setting up a site that's the next step. helping photographers more online, because at the moment these are all in person.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. So these are in-person workshops in South Africa?
Yeah.
Are you in Durban?
I'm just north of Durban, yes.
Yeah, okay. If you were starting out in weddings now, what advice would you give yourself?
Set your filing systems up properly, when you back up all your work. I mean, I've got so many hard drives from when I started out, and none of them are labeled properly. It's just a big mess. So that's the first thing. Come up with a really, really good workflow system. Try and learn from other photographers. I think that's really, really important. I assisted a couple of photographers when I first started out, and what I learned in all my years of education versus what I learned working my butt off for free was just like insane. You learn more being on the job than you do in any kind of institute. I think there's so much online these days, so many fabulous courses and free courses, paid courses, membership programs. I mean, you're basically setting something up now. So there's no excuse really to not be learning and growing. I think it's important to get your figures right. That's definitely important. What else? Golly, setting up a business. And I think worry less. We spend so much of our times worrying about where work's going to come in, and it does just tend to happen organically if you keep pushing and believing in yourself and going for it. I mean, like I said, if I look at the images that I was taking 8 years ago, no, not 8 years ago was still okay. It's more like 12 years ago. I kind of want to curl up in a ball and die. They're awful. But I didn't curl up in a ball and die. I just carried on. I was like pushing to always get better. Yeah, and keep the ego down. That's a big one.
How do you do that?
I practice mindfulness and meditation, and I think that's a really great way of getting over your shit and realizing that your mind is constantly like just going all the time. And meditation's a fabulous way of separating yourself from that. And
do you meditate before a wedding or during, or? I mean, I know during is difficult.
Sorry, I'm just going to meditate.
All right, bad question. Before.
When I'm in a good stage, I meditate every day. Unfortunately, when we get really busy, that's probably the time when you really need to be meditating and doing yoga and exercising and eating properly. But often, we don't. But I've been on a pretty good track for a while now, and I find it really helps with stress levels. It's actually proven that daily meditation actually helps with creativity, because you tap more into your right brain than just being brain, as opposed to that cognitive left brain that's just like a problem solving all the time and pure. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had this, but when you come up with an idea and you're like, how the hell did I ever come up with that idea? It's generally when you're totally and utterly in the moment. You're just like transfixed on what it is that you're doing. You're almost in a meditation, because you're not thinking about invoicing that client and what if it rains in half an hour and the bride's running late and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think meditation, like I said, is a good way to keep your ego in check. It's a great way of reducing stress. It's a fantastic way of just training your brain to be more creative. Yeah. And just have general happiness and well-being.
Yeah. Jacki, thank you very much. If people want to follow you online, where is the best place to do that?
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram, which is @Jacki Bruniquel. Are you going to put something up, or should I spell it out?
I'll put it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately the name is a bit tricky with the spelling. And then obviously there's my Facebook page, which is, again, Jacki Bruniquel. And then my website, which will be coming out soon. Well, it's up there. It's www.jackibruniquel.com. But it's going to be getting done soon.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Jacki, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.